sign number one that you are a millennial, you're watching this video. If we haven't met yet, hello, I'm Jessie, and today we're going to be talking about how to find work that doesn't make you want to tear your eyes out. Or even better, maybe work that you even actually enjoy. Let me start with a little bit of background. I was one of the lucky few who was offered a job right out of college. And although I had some reservations, I wanted to explore a little bit more, I took it because I had school debt that definitely needed to be paid. And while there were a lot of positives to that job, ultimately, it was a source of major stress in my life. So eventually, I decided to pack up and try my hand at freelancing. And that was wonderful for a while, but eventually I realized that that just wasn't it either. I wondered if passion existed. I wondered if it was something that could be found or created, or if it was just a myth that millennials are constantly searching for, but is ultimately a fruitless chase. But recently, I think I found the answer. And that's kind of hokey to say, but that's what this video is about. If you see me looking down, I've got like all my notes down here, so sorry. So there are a lot of theories out there around what passion is. Some people think that passion is something that you find, that you are on some sort of life journey to find your passion and then monetize it. Other people think that passion is something that you create, that if you devote your energy to anything for a long enough amount of time, then you will create a passion around it. Other people think that there's no such thing as passion, that you're better off just living for the weekend or trying to reduce expenses as much as possible so that you don't have to work as much. But some people love their jobs and make money at it, and sure, a lot of jobs suck, but I want to know how those people are doing it, how the people who are enjoying their work have found that thing. Now, I've asked all the standard questions of myself over the years of, what do I enjoy about my job? What don't I enjoy? Or what was I passionate about as a kid? And if we were following that logic, then the only way I would enjoy my job is if I was a dolphin trainer. And for a while even, I genuinely didn't even think that I could ever enjoy my work. I thought maybe I was broken. Maybe I was just one of those people who couldn't enjoy work in any meaningful way, and I should just suffer through it. But then one day, recently, I fell into a job that suits me really well, and I started to wonder, okay, so how did that happen? And how can that apply to other people? Like, can we work backwards and figure out the mechanics of how this happened? And basically, it turns out that this job fulfills the 8 elements of enjoyment, also known as flow. So if you are familiar at all with the productivity space, you've probably heard the term flow. It is that mental space that you go into when you are seriously engaged in something, where you are so focused on something that time seems to just melt away and hours feel like minutes, yada yada. I personally thought that this was a cop-out for the longest time. When I would hear people say like, oh yeah, you need to find what puts you into flow, I'm like, why would I want to focus on just distracting myself? You know, when I think of hours turning into minutes, my mental association is the time when I was a bagger at a grocery store and I would try to do different things to distract myself to make the time go faster so I could finish my shift. I'm like, why would we ever settle for that? That can't be what passion and fulfillment is about. But flow, it turns out, is bigger than that, because flow isn't just about distracting yourself to make time go faster. Flow is literally synonymous with enjoyment. True flow is synonymous with enjoyment. When we are fully engaged in something, that is when we report that we are the happiest, or that we're enjoying something. So this concept of flow came from a dude named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, as you can see here. He's considered the father of flow, and basically in his book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, he details how he and his team came upon this idea of flow. Basically, they asked a bunch of people in the moment that they were experiencing enjoyment what they were feeling. And he came up with 8 characteristics of what he calls flow. And they are, this is paraphrased, number 1 is they had the chance of completing the task. So whatever they were facing that they got enjoyment from, it was something that wasn't too difficult. They could feasibly do it, but it was a challenge. Number 2, they were able to concentrate. They were able to focus in on that thing. Number 3, there were clear goals around what they were trying to accomplish. You know, it wasn't something that felt pointless, and there was a clear yes or no answer at the end of whether or not they accomplished that thing. Number 4, there was immediate feedback. So similar to goals, it was clear if they were meeting those goals or not. Number 5, this one's a little bit long and vague here, but basically they had a deep but effortless involvement in that thing that took them out of everyday life. So they weren't concerned about what they were gonna eat for lunch. Their mind wasn't wandering. They were focused entirely on that task. Number 6, they had a sense of control, a sense of self-directedness. It was a task freely chosen. Number 7, they gave up self-consciousness. It was a task that they were able to get into so fully that they weren't worried about what people thought about them or what other people would say. They were just totally not even aware of self. They were just doing the thing. And then number 8, the biggest one that we always talk about, is time seemed to fly by. So these were the 8 characteristics of enjoyment/flow. And I've realized now that this is more than just a list of, just a list that describes what flow is, but it's actually a list of requirements that we can use to deconstruct what puts us into that flow state. Words. Basically, if you want to enjoy your work, then you need to find what puts you into flow, because they're gonna be the same thing. And of course, many things can put you into flow, right? I go into the flow state. It sounds so like mystical. I go into flow when I am reading a book. I go into flow when I am scrapbooking sometimes. So there are many things that could put you into flow, and out of those, some of those can even develop into a deeper passion, something that has more meaning for you, which we'll get into. But it starts by simply identifying what puts you into flow. So with that, I have put together a couple helpful questions that can help get you to start thinking about this concept of flow and what it means to you. So, what aspects of your current work put you into flow? So even if you don't love your current job or, schoolwork, wherever you are in life, whatever it is of the things that you have to do, what things do put you into flow? What hobbies put you into flow? But think beyond that too. This is really a whole life question. For example, just random examples here. Maybe you get into flow while you are researching how to take care of your houseplants. Or you suddenly find yourself, pages and pages deep in a forum on how to take care of your houseplants. Or maybe you get into flow rearranging your furniture. Yes, I have notes on the examples here because I'm not good at coming up with examples on my feet. Sorry, guys. But the point is that all of these things are activities that have you engaged, that there's a challenge that you are overcoming to the point that you lose track of yourself and of time. You are just fully engaged in that task. And with that, I do want to mention that flow does not apply to things like watching TV. When you're watching TV, you aren't in flow because there isn't any challenge attached to it. Unless maybe you are a film major and you're doing some sort of deep analysis on it, but that's probably not you. It might be, it's probably not. Another great question to consider is, what made you annoying as a kid? What was that thing or things? Again, there's plenty of things here. What were the things that you did even when there was opposition, even when people said you shouldn't, even when there was no other reward for it? You just nerded out on something and did it anyway. Okay, so once you have a list of things, the next thing that you want to do is to look for patterns in that list. Looking for the patterns in the mental processes that happen behind each of those tasks. So to give some examples from my own life, first of all, I do love rearranging furniture. I can spend an entire day rearranging the furniture in my house. I noticed that this had some similarities with when I was a bagger in a grocery store, and the thing that I did enjoy was organizing the items to go back. The things that people got up to the cash register and said, oh, I don't want this, was categorizing those by aisle and then taking those to the aisle and placing them back on the shelves. Silly, I know, but I noticed that there was a theme there, and that was that I loved the physical aspect of bringing order to an environment, of putting things back where they're supposed to go, right? And at this point then, it's helpful to start asking, okay, out of these, which ones hold that deeper meaning? Which ones might be tied a little bit closer to who I am as a person? If you want to use the word passion, then which one of these might I end up being more passionate about? On the topic of passion, I do want to point out too that I think passion as a concept tends to throw us off a lot. You know, you might wonder if you have a passion for being an actor because you've always wanted to be an actor and, you know, therefore it must be something that puts you into flow. And it's like, no, that's going it from the opposite direction. If you are someone who has done some acting before and you found that it was something that totally sucked you in, that you were totally in flow throughout the script memorization process, throughout the rehearsals, and throughout the performance, then yeah, sure, that's something that puts you into flow. But if you're primarily focused on, I want to be an actor because I want to be in movies, for example, then that's not necessarily something that's putting you into flow. That's you being focused on the outcome, and that can really throw you off throughout this process. So what I want you to do is get really honest with yourself. What provides you that natural enjoyment? Because that will get you much faster into a career or work situation that you enjoy. So once you have an idea of the kinds of tasks that put you into flow, then you need to start looking into what kinds of jobs will allow you to do those tasks most often. It sounds basic, but of course this requires quite a bit of research, especially if you are fairly early in your career and haven't had a lot of work experience, or if you've been doing one thing for a long time and haven't really been able to look over the garden wall and see what other things are out there. So some tips for this: ask people. Right? Find people who are doing things that you might be interested in and ask them about their day. Look up articles and YouTube videos on day in the life of XYZ and see what they actually do in a day and see how that aligns with the things that you know put you in flow. For me, if I were to be doing this from scratch, well, one thing that I know is I know that physical ordering of things puts me in flow. Well, with that knowledge, a job in managing inventory may actually put me in flow a lot and I may really enjoy it. Now, of course, that's not something that one normally thinks of when they think of passion. My passion is managing inventory, but that's okay. And here's the thing too, your passion does not necessarily need to be the same thing that you get money for. In fact, there's a lot of problems with that, or there can be a lot of problems with that, and we can talk about that on a future date. But overall, you can get that meaningful fulfillment from different areas. What I'm focused on right now is getting you or helping you find work that you don't hate, that puts you into flow, regardless of how deep and meaningful it is to you, because meaning can come from many different areas of our lives. Just to give an example, that job that I enjoy so much is being an editor and a proofreader. I love proofreading people's words, as was indicated by not only when I was a kid, but also I've done some editing in the past, and it's always been something that puts me into flow, and turning it into a career has been a great move for me. Now, is that something that is deep and personal to who I am as a person? Nah. I get a lot more meaning from making videos like this and from writing for my blog and for my audience. And that's okay, because both of the activities, all of these activities are really enjoyable for me, and I get my meaning from other sources. So you do not necessarily need to get meaning from your work. Just a little note there. So that is basically the formula for how to find enjoyment in your work, how to find a job that you love, or at least don't hate. But I do want to address one more thing before we wrap up here. And it's those of you who have listened to this whole thing and you're like, okay, that makes sense, but I'm already doing that thing, but I'm not enjoying it. So what's going wrong? Maybe you're like, I love photography. Photography puts me in flow, but I hate my photography job. So what gives? So the first thing to consider is whether or not that task is actually putting you into flow. Go ahead and go back to the list earlier and identify what is going wrong. To give a personal example, I was a website copywriter for a long time. I wrote content for websites to help those websites sell things. And I thought that this would put me into flow because writing puts me into flow, but the context wasn't right, because I realized that what puts me into flow is writing for myself and writing for my audience, not necessarily writing for other people. And along with that, I definitely wasn't unself-conscious. I was very self-conscious about, how the client would react to what I was writing. And I also didn't have very clear goals because it can be a very subjective area. So that for me was not something that actually put me into flow, even though writing was. So context does matter there. But let's say that the activity you're doing does indeed put you into flow. Well, then it's just a question of how can you do more of that thing? Because it's very possible that you signed up for a job that would put you into flow, but you're being bogged down by lots of other external things. For example, as a photographer, let's say you started a photography business and thought, well, great, I'll be able to do photography full time. Realistically, running your business comes with a lot of other tasks like marketing yourself, networking, billing, admin, email management. All of those things may be distracting you from your photography. So whether it's something that you are doing on your own as business or whether you are within a company, the question then becomes, okay, how can I remove some of those or all of those things in order to let me focus on that thing that puts me into flow more often? So ultimately, understanding flow, knowing these components can help you pinpoint exactly what isn't working and help you figure out what kinds of changes need to happen, whether that is just switching up a couple tasks in your day or whether it means changing careers or changing fields. So do you see how powerful this is? Do you see why I am so excited about figuring out how flow works and what it is and how we can use it to improve our lives? The bottom line is that there are so many things out there that can bring you enjoyment and fulfillment in your work and in your personal life. And so if you are not feeling that you are enjoying either of those things, either sphere of life, then you need to get back to what flow is and you need to figure out what that is, because there are alternatives. There are so many different paths that you could be taking. So get out there and go figure it out what it is that you enjoy doing and figure out how you can do more of it. Camera's about to die. We'll wrap up here. Take care, guys.